there's a part of me that feels like a bad booktuber. You'll see. Just keep watching the video. Hi BookTube, it's Kim at K Becker's Books, and I am here to do my March wrap-up. March was a combination of March of the Mammoths and middle grade March, and I took part in both. So I'm going to show you the books that I finished at the last half of the month, and I have a small pile of DNFs that I also wanted to show you. So let's get into it. I forgot to count how many books I read in the first half of March, so I'm going to link a couple of my own videos down below. I'll link my mid-March review, and I'm going to link a review video that I did on the first book I will show you, and that's Middlemarch. Again, I'm not going to go into any details. I finished this for March of the Mammoths, and you can click on the link below to see my review of the book. I did it as a buddy read with Alba from Seriella, and we had a lot of fun. And I love this book. This is a 5-star book, and quite possibly my new favorite of all time. The next book I finished did not fit in either category. It was not either middle grade or a March of the Mammoth book, but I had a stack of library books that I thought I might as well work through because they're not going back anytime soon. And it is She Said by Jodi, Kantor, and Megan Twohey. And this is the book written by these two journalists on the breaking of the Harvey Weinstein story. I think I gave the book 4 stars, but I honestly might go back and change that to 3. And here's why. The story itself is fascinating, and the writing is done extremely well. These are experienced journalists with have done tons of other work. They worked very well together to put the book together and to break the story. And it describes in detail the different celebrities that they spoke to, the different famous people that they talked with. They did some exceptional journalistic research and investigation. So the story of how they broke the Harvey Weinstein story is fascinating and expertly done. However, the book took a change in path a little further than midway, probably 2/3 of the way through the book. And after they concluded their part of breaking the Harvey Weinstein story and publishing it, the last part of the book is they changed gears and wrote about the sexual assault story of Brett Kavanaugh told by Christine Blasey Ford. Both of the stories on their own, the breaking of the Weinstein story and the Kavanaugh story, are fascinating and have an incredible amount of depth. But I'm not sure why they changed paths and put both of these stories in one book. They both apply to She Said. They both apply to the Me Too movement. However, they don't link with each other. Both stories deserve a book individually. There's enough material, there's enough research, and there's enough press to write about both stories in their own books. So, exceptionally well written. I would definitely recommend it, but I wish they had split the stories up. Now, the last book I finished in March was a middle grade book, and it's Nevermoor by Jessica Townsend. This is the Trials of Morrigan Crow. It is the story of Morrigan Crow, who is 11 years old, and she was born as a cursed child, or so she thinks. And she's been told this her whole life, that when she turns 11, or I think it's between 11 and 12, okay, I'm going to go back. I think the day she turns 12 is the day she's supposed to die. And that's what she's been told her entire life. This was a really fun book to read, but there were enough similarities to Harry Potter that I kept pausing and saying, oh yeah, okay, but I kept reading, and it was a very fun story. A lot of description, very colorful. Morrigan Crow is, like I said, is told her whole life that she's a cursed child and she's meant to die. However, at the very last minute, she gets rescued. And the point of the book is her being chosen to join the Wundersmith Society. But in order to do that, she has to pass trials. And so the subtitle, The Trials of Morrigan Crow, is her story of what that process is like, who is there, who is her patron, who is there supporting her, and how she gets through this process. It was a lot of fun to read. I did give it a 3, I think, and it was, again, like I said, there were a little too many similarities to Harry Potter and the magical stories. There was a lot of detail, of kind of extraneous details that I didn't know if, they didn't seem important to the story. A lot of magical moments that seemed like extras. And it's a middle grade book, but it's fairly chunky. It's fast to read. So I'm not sure, I wasn't sure about those storylines. The writing is okay. And it's not just because it's a middle grade level, but I've read other middle grade books that the writing is at a higher level. But it was a lot of fun to read, and I'm pretty sure I'm going to read the second one. I'll show you that in a little bit. So those are the books that I finished in March, and I think I finished 8 or 9 books in March, which is pretty good, considering Middlemarch was 838 pages. Now, here's where I feel a little guilty for being kind of a bad booktuber, because I have a stack of DNFs. Before we were all isolated and before we were all staying at home, hopefully most of us voluntarily, I was reading Middlemarch, and I went to the library and got a stack of books, and I found this one just walking through the stacks. And this is My Life in Middlemarch by Rebecca Mead. And I was fascinated. I thought, I'm going to finish Middlemarch, and then I'll read this one to follow it chapter by chapter and read Mead's take on the book and how she felt about it, and hopefully finding some commentary on the novel and maybe the life of George Eliot. And there was that in the book, and I didn't get too far. I think I might have reached 50 or 75 pages. But a lot of the content in here was describing the plot line and the stories of other George Eliot books, of which I did not read and want to read. So I said, oh, no, I don't, I'm spoiling myself. So I actually put the book down, and I will probably pick it up again at some point in the future, but there was nothing wrong with the book. It was very well written, and I was really enjoying the short amount that I read, but it wasn't the right time. So I'll pick that up at another future date. The other one I found is a memoir called Crazy Brave by Joy Harjo, who is the Poet Laureate of the United States. And I'm not a big poetry fan, but this is her memoir. The interesting thing, in my opinion, is it's very short. It's not even 200 pages. And it says on the back, in this transcendent memoir, grounded in tribal myth and ancestry, that's a big clue. Music and poetry. Joy Harjo details her journey to become a poet. Born in Oklahoma, the end place of the Trail of Tears, Harjo grew up learning to dodge an abusive stepfather by finding shelter in her imagination, a deep spiritual life, and connection with the natural world. The book started off very well. She's a poet, so the description and the writing style is beautiful. But I don't know how to describe this. Her storyline and her writing goes off in different ribbons. And it's almost as if each ribbon turns into a trail of smoke. And she went off of the trail of her personal story into transcendental material, myth, and spirituality. I cannot talk in this video today. Myth and spirituality, all of which is fine. I normally would have really enjoyed reading that type of material. But I was a little taken aback because I was expecting to read more detail and depth into her personal story. And her story is in here, but I don't think this book didn't work for me. I would recommend it to somebody who enjoys her poetry and likes that type of writing style, but it just didn't work well for me. The next one was a huge disappointment. Again, I got this out from the library. And several years ago, I read Joan Didion's Year of Magical Thinking, which depicts the grief of after the sudden death of her husband. So this one, heartbreakingly enough, it is the story of, or a story, a depiction of her life after the death of her daughter. And it just, first her husband and then her daughter a few years later. I mean, it's heartbreaking to me. And this is Joan Didion's Blue Nights. I was very disappointed. The reason I picked it up was her writing is exceptional. And the Year of Magical Thinking was so raw and so well depicted her grief process. And each of us who have ever dealt with grief in any way process it differently. So it was fascinating to me, the quality of her writing and the richness of her writing with the raw story of how she felt, how she dealt, what happened to her psychically after the sudden death of her husband. I was kind of expecting the same tone in this book, and I was very interested to hear what happened to her daughter, how she passed away, how Joan felt and dealt with that process. I was looking forward to reading, I think I was looking forward to reading more of the same tone and content as after her husband died. But clearly we all know the grief is different when you lose a spouse and when you lose a child. It clearly is. What I did not read in Blue Nights was the rawness of Joan's emotion. And what I did read was a whole lot of name dropping and brand dropping and description of Joan is remembering where they lived and how old her daughter was at the time and some of the things her daughter would wear. And those moments were so sad and so emotional. And that's exactly what I expected to read in the book. But I didn't care what type of china they were eating Chinese food or chicken wings off of. I didn't care about the name of the china. I just didn't care about the brand names and the famous people that she knew at which time. I wanted to hear more about her daughter's life and Joan's status and emotional, what's the word I'm looking for? Her emotional state after the loss of her daughter. And I think I got halfway through the book and I'm like, no, I no longer care about the names of the famous people and the brand names of whatever it is that they're using for china or glassware or whatever. There's too much of it. I felt that it was fairly vapid, and that was disappointing in a book by Joan Didion, so no. Now, these next two I will probably get skewered for, and I almost feel like an awful person. But for middle grade March, I have never read Anne of Green Gables by Ellmann Montgomery, and I tried it. I tried it, and had I read this as a younger reader, I might have loved it. But through the whole section, I think I read about a third of the book, all I wanted Anne to do was shut up. She does not stop talking, and it's just incessant rambling. I'm a horrible person. I really am a horrible person. I just did not like Anne of Green Gables, and I would be more than happy to send this book. It's a really nice, beautiful copy of this edition. Anybody wants it, you can have it, because I couldn't do it. This was just not for me. The story of a young 11-year-old orphan in Prince Edward Island, Canada, and the scenery is beautiful, the description is amazing. The story idea is wonderful, and I completely understand why other readers are attracted to it. Not for me. Now, I started another Mammoth book in March, and can't stand it. And again, I'm in danger of being skewered and a whole bunch of other booktubers probably unsubscribing to my channel. But I'm going to be honest with you. I got to get rid of this book. Ducks Newburyport. No, I can't do it. I had a very brief comment back and forth from Robert at Barter Hordes, and he actually said on his channel he read the entire book and wished he could get that time back from his life. I tried. I read probably the first 20 pages. I had to put it down. My head was swimming with information. And then I said, okay, I'll read little tiny chunks at a time. And I tried to. I read another 5 pages and again put it down, and then I would pick it up and I would go to a random spot in the book, and it felt like the exact same stuff I read earlier. And then I'd go to the middle, and I would try another chunk and another chunk. And I wanted to like it, and I wanted to be part of the conversation, but I absolutely hate this book. And again, it's in almost perfect condition. Anybody wants this, let me know and I'll get your address and I'll send it to you. It's not for me. I am already a middle-aged woman. I have a family. I have anxieties and worries, and I think about things all the time, even when I'm baking or cooking. I have a couple of kids. I didn't want or need to read her thoughts, and I didn't want to be, I felt trapped in her head and I couldn't get out, and I felt like there was so much information, it was overstimulation, and I hated that feeling. And yeah, I could have read a few pages at a time, but then it would have taken me forever to read this book, and I just am not interested. Anybody wants it, you can have it. What am I currently reading? The book I will finish today is The Girl with the Louding Voice by Abby Daré. This is for my book group, and we're meeting virtually on Friday, so we'll be discussing it. It's the story of a young Nigerian girl. She's 14 years old. Her name is Adunni. And her father sells her into marriage to a 60-year-old man because he needs money for him and his 2 sons. Her mother has passed away, and before she died, she made her husband promise that he would never send Adunni into marriage because all the girl wants is an education, and her mother raised her to aspire to getting an education. Her father breaks his promise and sells her into marriage, and it is her story. I don't want to say anymore because it would be a little bit of a spoiler, but all she wants is to go to school, and she wants to learn, and I think she actually wants to become a teacher because she loves school so much. I'll give a full review in my April mid-month review, but I've got about 100 pages left, and we'll finish that today. And then once I finish that, I think I'm going to continue on with Wundersmith, which is the book after Nevermoor by Jessica Townsend. And I just want to continue to find out what happens to Morrigan Crow. And after this, I'll decide whether I want to keep going with the series, and we'll see. So that's it for the last half of March. And it's going to be, I think I'm going to feel a little bit liberated from not reading middle grade books and a Mammoth book. It's not like I had to do either one, and I think I put my own restrictions on myself because the majority of the books I read were middle grade, and then I read Middlemarch through the entire month. But again, as I've said in other videos, I hate TBRs, I hate to feel boxed in, and I want to break out from that. So I think I'm going to enjoy reading books in April that I pick for myself, and they could be any genre, any form, any whatever. So I'm feeling that's going to be a lot of fun, and I'm going to enjoy my reading a little bit more in April. Write a comment below, subscribe if you haven't already. I'd love to know what you're reading in April and what you thought of any of these books. Don't hate me too bad on the books that I didn't like. If you have other opinions, I would love to know and love to have a conversation about that. So hope you're doing well, and I will see you soon. Bye.